So you see the health info repository, so paging setting repository, and then you have some paging sorting repository, and then you have some CRUD repository. It's depending. It's completely depend what type of operation you try to do, or what type of functionality you need, and you can just use it for your different use cases. For this case, for simplicity case, we just put it all possibility you have, because we are trying to demonstrate the all possibility. But end of the day, maybe you can select only one or two repositories that fit with your requirements or your implementation. That's all. That's really flexible. There's all possibilities there. So you just simply select what type of repository to extend it in your domain specific repository, and then implement those interfaces, implement those functionalities, and define your controller. So that means we define all the repositories, our domain repositories, and then we are get ready. So our domain is ready, domain model is ready, and then our interface repository is ready. Now we define the repositories that we need, maybe customized repositories for our CRUD operation, for the create, update, delete operation. Just very simple. We try to put it here. Maybe you need a complex reporting a statistical repository, like the projections, and then some graph repository, graph functionalities that you can group it, you can summarize the information, build a specific statistical report. That case you need to really specify the implementation of your implementation of your, maybe use the native queries, queries for the MongoDB case, or other cases, and you write down some projection queries, and then that's all finished. So that means if you go to the here, one example, like, so you define the interface, and then we implement the interface that we have. Sorry, so it's recorded. So So you implement your interface with the CRUD repository, and implement the interface in here. Just simply we inject our repository that we need, that we define already there in the repository directory, the package, and then we call the repository, or you auto-add this repository, and then use those repository with this very simple find all, save, and update, and delete, and so on and so forth, these functionalities. But you got the source code from the my GitHub. I will show you the link of the GitHub. So you take it and see the examples. You have update, delete, and find a specific user, and update is a very specific user. It's very standard. The CRUD operation is there. So I will show you. And then we are continuing for the complex cases, like the projections for statistical reporting, and then some complex query written, and then so then if it's finished there, you define the your controller. You see the your controller service definitions, and you define the controller. So the resource in the resource directory is the controller directory. So you can name it like the controller, not resource. You can put it like the controller. It is also enough. But for the I define it's like resource directory. So you define all the controller into the resource directory, or you can define like controller directory and put it all the controller that you need, and this you define for the all the models. So so it's the controller definitions, and that's called the controller. If we define here is only one single controller, the user registration controller, and then we are continuing the further for other controller definition for the address, location, administrative info, repository, administrative info, demographic info, health, medicine management, and then patient management, user registration, and user role. Each of the controller we define there, and after the controller definition is done with all the basic CRUD operation or complex complex geographical operations, and then it works automatically. That's what we expected. So that means our controller definition is done. Then now is the most important one. So we have that's I need to talking about a little bit. I have a different videos for about that ones. Then how can you handle those things like applications, the Spring Boot profiling? How can you flag it like this way? Application.properties, development, production, QA, release, and testing bar. So you just simply same copy with the different environments: development, production, QA, rail, and test. And then after that, just you packed your jar files as a jar, and then you just override this one. That's I said I will show you every step when I start the configuration, externally configure these things. That we got the idea. This is the really Spring Boot profiling concept, multi-profiling concept for different environment installation of your applications. You just simply copy paste from these all things and then override those things, because this is the resource information, config information inside the jar files. When you create the jar files and you try to override this information depending where you try to install these applications, since locally or in a part of the world, maybe USA, Canada, or Bangladesh, or India, Pakistan, doesn't matter which machine is located, which port is free, where the machine is located, and where the your database located, and then that's all finished. So you got the idea. So that means you have all the property setups, your production exactly same that I said. This is just copy paste, but you build it like flag it like the prefix is like dev, production, QA, rel, and test, and that's all. And you try to build the applications. You see the productions and the QA, quality assurance. You have a release, exactly the same thing is happening. Just you define your prefix and override based on the prefix that you have it that you need, and just you need to be override what you need to see the change the maybe the production database. We have collections like production collections in MongoDB, QA collections MongoDB, because I try to give it to you how the possibility to change, how you can change it, how can you deploy those applications with different environments. So you see that we are trying to build the jar files, and then is in deployment. Then we install the application, just like you see the applications is here. You see the jar files, the Spring Boot REST MongoDB jar files, the original one. Just you need to be simply copy this jar file into the your respective directory in local directory, or send to this jar file into the installation department. Because if you have working with a big company, that they have the real installation department. So development department, test department, installation department, they will install the application for your job. If you are working with a small company or independent, and then you need to build everything you site. So you packed your jar files, and then you try to install it yourself, where your database located, or which PC, which PC you try to install these applications, and then change which port are free for this application, and so on and so forth. Just you build applications, you prefix, you build your Spring Boot profiling with the different prefix with production, rail, and QA test, and then you build a jar and copy the jar into the your local directory. Let's have a continue the how the installation is will be done. So we have all the prefixes set up. We have the jar files, and that's all. So now we done. Our project is building very fast version. You see the version number 0001 is there. So we just simply copy. You see that this is the information you need to understand. So we just simply copy our jar file that we build into the in my projects. Copy the jar files. Here is the jar file, and this is the two files: environment settings, that command, the script and then start services. This is the two services we need to write down and then run the application, and it works automatically. Let's continue. That's one. So we copy the jar files or deploy or copy this jar file into the your Artifactory, take the jar file from the Artifactory. This is my one of the example I'm trying to do, but we didn't have enough time to build this the Artifactory tutorials. Artifactory screencast. We tried to our best to find out the time to build how can you build your own Artifactory